The Great Hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with angry voices. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the curved seats, their forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the soft lighting. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Chen, the human representative, looking calm despite the chaos around him. The Vorth commander, Kralthax, slammed his clawed fist on his speaking platform. His reptilian face twisted with anger as he spoke. The humans dare to tell us how to conduct our wars. These primitive newcomers who barely learned to travel between stars. Beside him, the crystalline form of hegemony speaker Zethari chimed in agreement. Her voice sounded like breaking glass when she was angry. They have been in space for less than 200 of their years. We have ruled the galaxy for 1,000 times longer than they have existed as a spacefaring species. Ambassador Chen stood slowly. He was a small man with graying hair and tired eyes. His simple blue uniform looked plain next to the elaborate armor and robes of the other representatives. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried clearly through the hall. Honored representatives, Chen began. For 3 standard cycles, Earth has made the same request. Stop attacking neutral worlds. Stop destroying refugee ships. Stop the senseless killing of civilians who cannot defend themselves. The Vorth commander laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. And what will you do if we refuse, little human? Send your tiny fleet of exploration ships against our battle fleets? Chen looked directly at the reptilian commander. We are currently operating under peacekeeping protocols. We ask you to reconsider your actions before we are forced to change those protocols. More laughter filled the hall. The representatives had seen the human ships, small vessels that seemed more suited for carrying supplies than fighting wars. Earth's entire military presence in known space consisted of maybe 50 ships, compared to the thousands that the Vorth and Hegemony could field. Speaker Zethari's crystal body flashed with amused colors. Your peacekeeping protocols are meaningless. We have studied your technology. Your ships are weak. Your weapons are basic. Your population on Earth numbers only in the millions. You are nothing compared to the great powers of this galaxy. The other representatives nodded in agreement. The humans had appeared in galactic politics only 50 years ago, claiming to come from a small world called Earth in an unremarkable star system. Their technology seemed decent but not remarkable. Their ships were fast but lightly armed. Their diplomats were polite but carried no real threat behind their words. Chen remained standing as the laughter died down. We do not wish to fight. War brings suffering to everyone involved, but if you continue these attacks on innocent people, Earth will have no choice but to respond. Commander Kralthax stood, his massive form towering over the human. You threaten us? You and what army, little man? We have seen your military reports. 50 ships, maybe 100,000 soldiers spread across a dozen systems. We could crush you without even trying. The Vorth had indeed studied human military capabilities very carefully. Their spies reported that Earth maintained only small defensive stations around their colonies. The human ships appeared to be converted civilian vessels with basic weapons added as an afterthought. Intelligence suggested that humans were more interested in exploration and trade than military conquest. Chen's expression never changed. We are asking nicely. Please stop the attacks. Please consider the lives you are destroying. This is not a threat, it is a warning. The hall erupted in renewed laughter. The Zentari ambassador, whose species had been neutral in the conflict, leaned forward with interest. Ambassador Chen, what exactly are you warning us about? Your government has been saying the same thing for months, but you never explain what will happen if we ignore your warnings. For a moment, something flickered in Chen's tired eyes. We hope you never have to find out. 3 days later, the situation reached its breaking point. The Vorth flagship Bone Render, a massive destroyer the size of a small city, intercepted a human medical frigate near the Kelvari refugee camps. The frigate carried supplies and medicine for the millions of displaced civilians who had fled the fighting. Captain Veltar of the Bone Render contacted the human ship. Human vessel, you are carrying supplies to our enemies. Surrender your cargo or be destroyed. The medical frigate's captain, Dr. Sarah Williams, responded immediately. This is a humanitarian mission. We carry only medical supplies and food for refugees. We are protected under galactic law. Captain Veltar laughed. There is no law here except Vorth law. You have 10 seconds to comply. Dr. Williams activated her emergency beacon, sending out a distress call that would reach every ship in the system. Please reconsider. These supplies are for children and families who have nothing to do with your war. The countdown reached 0. The Bone Render's main guns fired, turning the medical frigate into scattered debris in seconds. 200 human doctors, nurses, and aid workers died instantly, along with enough supplies to feed thousands of refugees for months. The emergency beacon had done its job. Within hours, every major government in the galaxy had received the recording of the attack. Ambassador Chen was called to an emergency session of the Galactic Council. This time the hall was quieter. Even the Vorth representative seemed somewhat uncomfortable with the destruction of a clearly marked medical vessel. But Commander Kralthax remained defiant. The humans knew the risks when they entered our operational area, he declared. If they cannot protect their ships, they should not send them into war zones. Ambassador Chen walked slowly to the center of the hall. He looked older than before, as if the weight of the dead was pressing down on him. When he spoke, his voice was still quiet, but something had changed in his tone. For 3 years, Earth has asked politely for an end to attacks on civilians. For 3 years, we have operated under strict peacekeeping protocols. For 3 years, we have hoped that reason and compassion would prevail. He turned to look directly at the Vorth delegation. Yesterday, you destroyed a medical ship carrying supplies to refugee children. 200 of our people died trying to help those who could not help themselves. The hall was completely silent now. Even the translator systems seemed to be holding their breath. Chen continued, Earth's patience has been exhausted. We are no longer operating under peacekeeping protocols. All restrictions on human military forces have been removed. Commander Kralthax snorted. So the humans finally decide to show their teeth? What will you do with your handful of exploration ships? Ambassador Chen looked around the hall one final time. His tired eyes met those of every representative present. You will find out very soon. The human ambassador gathered his simple papers and walked toward the exit. At the doorway, he paused and turned back. We tried to warn you, he said simply. We tried to do this the easy way. As the door closed behind him, the hall erupted in discussion. Most of the representatives seemed amused by the humans' dramatic exit. The Vorth delegation was already planning their next attacks, confident that the humans could do nothing to stop them. Only a few of the older, more experienced ambassadors felt a chill of unease. The Zentari representative, who had been watching human behavior for decades, quietly began composing an urgent message to his homeworld. The message was simple. Begin emergency defense preparations. I believe we have seriously underestimated the humans. But even he had no idea how right he was, or how completely wrong everyone else had been about Earth's true capabilities. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped being polite. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days after Ambassador Chen left the Galactic Council. Communication networks across the galaxy lit up with impossible readings that made no sense to the monitoring stations. Deep space sensors, which had been quietly cataloging stellar phenomena for decades, suddenly revealed they were much more than simple observation equipment. The research stations that humans had scattered throughout dozens of systems began transmitting complex signals to each other, creating a communication network that spanned half the known galaxy. Admiral Zektor of the Vorth High Command stared at the tactical display in disbelief. What am I looking at? He demanded of his intelligence officer. Commander Nithal, whose job it was to track human military movements, looked pale as he read from his reports. Sir, it appears the humans have been building something for years. The energy signatures we're detecting shouldn't be possible. The display showed dozens of locations that had been marked as simple human mining operations or research outposts. Now each one was broadcasting massive energy readings that suggested military installations of enormous size. Mining operations don't generate this much power, Admiral Zektor growled. How long have they been hiding this from us? Before Commander Nithal could answer, an aide rushed into the command center with an urgent message tablet. Sir, we're receiving reports from Patrol Fleet 7. They've made contact with a human vessel. Admiral Zektor activated the communication link to Fleet 7. Captain Relkoth's voice came through, sounding confused and worried. Admiral, we've encountered the human ship listed in our files as the research vessel Retribution. But sir, this is no research vessel. Explain yourself, Captain. The ship, it's changing, sir. What we thought was a simple exploration craft is transforming before our eyes. Weapons systems are emerging from what looked like cargo holds. The hull is reconfiguring itself. Sir, the energy readings we're getting from this single ship are higher than our entire patrol fleet combined. Admiral Zektor felt a cold chill run down his spine. Captain, you are ordered to withdraw immediately and report back to... The communication cut off in a burst of static. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human vessels that had been classified as harmless exploration ships revealed their true nature. The UES Retribution, under the command of Captain Sarah Reeves, was just one of dozens of ships that were shedding their peaceful disguises. Captain Reeves stood on her bridge as the transformation completed. Around her, crew members worked at stations that had been hidden beneath false panels for years. The ship's true command center was 3 times larger than what alien observers had ever seen. Status report, she ordered calmly. All systems online, Captain, replied her tactical officer. Fusion cores are running at full power. Weapon systems are armed and ready. Shield generators are operating at maximum efficiency. Excellent. Begin standard patrol operations. Remember, we are no longer hiding what we can do. The Retribution moved toward the nearest Vorth patrol fleet with a speed that should have been impossible for a ship of its apparent size. What the aliens hadn't known was that the vessel's true mass was hidden by technology that folded space around the ship, making it appear much smaller than it actually was. When Captain Reeves opened fire on the Vorth ships, the results were devastating. Energy beams that should have required massive installations on planetary surfaces were fired from compact weapon systems that somehow generated more power than entire Vorth battle stations. The first Vorth destroyer simply vanished, its shields and armor offering no protection against weapons that operated on principles the aliens had never encountered. The second ship managed to return fire, but its weapons passed harmlessly through what appeared to be the human ship's position, striking empty space instead. Impossible, breathed the Vorth captain just before his ship joined the first in oblivion. Captain Reeves watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Set course for the next patrol group. Signal Fleet Command that Operation Revelation is proceeding on schedule. Meanwhile, the hegemony was learning that their massive crystal motherships, each the size of a small moon and considered invincible for over 1,000 years, were equally helpless against humanity's true military capabilities. Admiral Rodriguez commanded a strike force of ships that the hegemony had classified as light support vessels. The crystal beings had studied these ships carefully and determined they posed no threat to their mighty motherships. They were wrong. The lead hegemony mothership, Eternal Radiance, was a magnificent structure of living crystal that housed over 1 million beings. Its shields could deflect planet-killing weapons, and its own armaments could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Rodriguez approached it with just 5 ships. Hegemony vessel, he broadcast on all frequencies. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. The response came as a pulse of crystalline laughter that sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. Tiny human insects, your entire fleet could not scratch our hull. Withdraw now or be destroyed. Admiral Rodriguez sighed. Target the shield generators. Fire when ready. The human ships opened fire with weapons that made no sense to hegemony science. Instead of trying to overpower the massive shields with brute force, the human weapons seemed to find the exact frequency needed to cause the shield matrices to collapse from within. As the shields failed, the humans demonstrated another impossible technology. Their ships, which should have been far too small to carry the necessary equipment, began cutting through the mothership's crystal hull with surgical precision. Speaker Zethari, commanding from the ship's core, watched in horror as human forces carved neat passages through crystal that should have been harder than any known material. How are they doing this? Our hull is impervious to all known weapons. Her tactical officer's voice shook as he replied. They appear to be using some form of molecular disruption field. They're not breaking the crystal. They're convincing it to stop being crystal. Within hours, the mighty Eternal Radiance was a hollow shell drifting in space. Admiral Rodriguez had taken the ship apart piece by piece, rescuing the civilian population while systematically disabling every military system. The reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human exploration vessels were revealing themselves as advanced warships. Human research stations were actually massive military installations. Human colonial settlements were heavily fortified military bases that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The galaxy's intelligence services had been completely fooled. Every assessment of human military capability had been wrong by orders of magnitude. The species they had dismissed as newcomers with primitive technology were demonstrating mastery of physics that made their own science look like children playing with simple tools. On Earth, General Harrison stood in the command center that had been hidden beneath what appeared to be a simple agricultural research facility. The massive chamber stretched for kilometers underground, filled with holographic displays showing military operations across known space. "Status report on all fronts," he ordered. "Operation Revelation is 90% complete, sir," replied his aide. "All hidden installations are now operating at full capacity. Fleet assets have revealed their true configurations and are engaging designated targets. Enemy forces are reporting catastrophic losses across all theaters." General Harrison nodded grimly. "And our losses?" "Minimal, sir. Fewer than expected casualties. The enemy's weapons are exactly as ineffective as our simulations predicted." "Excellent. Signal all fleet commanders. We are now operating under full military authority. No more warnings. No more second chances. Any hostile action against civilian targets will result in immediate destruction of the attacking force." The aide paused, then asked quietly, "Sir, what about the Galactic Council?" General Harrison's expression hardened. They had their chance to listen to Ambassador Chen. They chose violence instead of peace. Now they'll learn what happens when humans stop asking nicely. Across the galaxy, the message was becoming clear. The humans had been holding back for 50 years, presenting themselves as a minor power while secretly building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. They had tried diplomacy first, offering peaceful solutions to every crisis. But now the peaceful phase was over, and the galaxy was about to learn why that might have been their last chance for an easy resolution. The intercepted Vorth communication was played in emergency sessions across every major government in the galaxy. Admiral Zektor's voice, normally strong and commanding, now shook with fear and confusion. "High Command, this is Admiral Zektor reporting from the Keth Mori system. Our entire battle fleet has been... I don't know how to describe this. Destroyed is not the right word. The humans didn't just defeat us, they took us apart like we were children playing with toy ships." The recording continued as panicked voices filled the background. "They knew everything, High Command. Every weakness in our ships, every flaw in our tactics, every backup plan we had prepared. It was like they had been studying us for decades and knew exactly how to counter everything we could do." General Kavar of the Hegemony High Council listened to similar reports flooding in from their own forces. His crystalline form had lost its usual bright glow and now appeared dim and gray with shock. "This cannot be accurate," he insisted to his intelligence chief. "Our analysts confirmed that human military capacity was limited to basic defensive capabilities. How could they have hidden such massive forces?" Intelligence Director Melthari's voice carried the weight of terrible realization. "Sir, I believe our entire understanding of humanity has been wrong from the beginning. The evidence suggests they have been deliberately hiding their true capabilities for the entire time we have known them." She activated a holographic display, showing a star map of human space. "Look at this system analysis. What we thought was their homeworld with a population of 5 million actually shows industrial capacity consistent with a population in the hundreds of billions." General Kavar stared at the display. "That's impossible. Our surveys clearly showed Earth as a single inhabited world with basic technology. Sir, we're now detecting massive industrial complexes on dozens of worlds we thought were uninhabited. Space stations the size of moons hidden behind what appeared to be asteroid fields. Entire fleets of ships that were somehow invisible to our sensors until they chose to reveal themselves." The truth was becoming clear across the galaxy. Humanity's true military doctrine wasn't what anyone had expected. While other species built obvious displays of power, massive ships, intimidating weapons, threatening military parades, humans had chosen a completely different approach. They had made themselves appear weak while secretly becoming the strongest force in known space. Captain Morthek of the Vorth Intelligence Division had spent years studying human behavior. His reports, once dismissed as overly cautious, were now being read with new urgency by every military leader in the galaxy. "Human psychology differs fundamentally from our own," his earlier report stated. "Where we see strength in displays of power, they seem to prefer concealment and misdirection. They study their potential enemies extensively before revealing their own capabilities. The report continued with observations that had seemed irrelevant at the time. Human exploration missions always seem to visit strategically important locations. Their research stations are invariably placed in positions that would be ideal for military monitoring. Their diplomatic personnel ask many questions about military capabilities, while revealing very little about their own. What had been interpreted as the curiosity of newcomers was now revealed as systematic intelligence gathering by a species that had been preparing for war while hoping for peace. The Centauri ambassador, who had been one of the few to express concern about humanity's warnings, received a priority communication from his government. Chancellor Velanor's image appeared on his private screen looking grim. Ambassador, our deep space monitoring stations have detected something that defies explanation. The humans appear to have industrial installations in systems we didn't even know they had visited. The ambassador wasn't surprised. Chancellor, I tried to warn the council. The humans' behavior never matched their apparent capabilities. They were too confident for a species with limited military power. It's worse than we thought, Chancellor Velanor continued. Our analysts have been reviewing 50 years of human contact records. Every treaty they signed, every trade agreement they made, every diplomatic exchange. They were gathering information while giving away almost nothing about themselves. The hologram shifted to show intelligence reports. They've been running detailed war games against every major power in the galaxy. They know the location of every military base, every supply depot, every weakness in our defenses. They've been watching us the entire time. This revelation sent shockwaves through the galactic intelligence community. Humans hadn't just been hiding their military strength. They had been systematically studying every potential enemy while presenting themselves as harmless newcomers. The Vorth discovered this when they attempted to fall back to their fortress worlds, only to find that their impregnable planetary defense systems had been quietly sabotaged by human research teams that had visited years earlier. General Harrison reviewed the operational reports with satisfaction. Operation Reckoning was proceeding exactly as planned. Sir, his tactical coordinator reported, Fourth defensive positions on Kalar Prime have been neutralized. The shield generators failed exactly as our infiltration teams predicted they would. And the hegemony strongholds? Their crystal matrix defenses are collapsing on schedule. Our molecular disruption technology is proving even more effective than laboratory tests suggested. General Harrison nodded. What about enemy leadership? Both the Vorth High Command and Hegemony High Council are attempting to relocate to secure facilities. However, all of their secret bunkers were identified and mapped by our survey teams years ago. The general smiled grimly. I want them captured, not killed. They need to understand exactly how thoroughly they have been outplayed. The scope of human preparation became clear as the operation continued. Every accidental encounter between human ships and alien forces had been carefully planned intelligence-gathering missions. Every peaceful diplomatic contact had been an opportunity to study potential enemies. Human anthropologists who had been welcomed on alien worlds for cultural exchange programs were revealed to be military analysts who had spent years learning how to exploit weaknesses in alien psychology and tactics. The simple technology that humans had demonstrated was actually sophisticated equipment designed to appear primitive while collecting massive amounts of data about alien capabilities. Most shocking of all, humans had developed countermeasures for military technologies that the aliens hadn't even revealed they possessed. Secret weapons that the Vorth and Hegemony had been saving for desperate situations proved useless because humans had somehow discovered them and developed specific defenses years in advance. Commander Kralthax, who had laughed at Ambassador Chen's warnings just days earlier, now found himself trapped in a disabled command ship as human boarding parties prepared to take him prisoner. How? He demanded as Captain Reeves entered his bridge. How did you know about our quantum torpedoes? We've never used them in battle. Captain Reeves looked at the defeated Vorth commander with something that might have been pity. You tested them at the Corral facility 18 months ago. Our observation post on the third moon recorded everything. Impossible. That moon is uninhabited. It was uninhabited when you first surveyed it. We built our facility after you established your weapons testing program. We've been watching you develop those torpedoes from the very beginning. The revelation hit Kralthax like a physical blow. You've been watching us. For how long? Since the day you started attacking civilian targets, Captain Reeves replied. We hoped you would listen to reason. When you chose violence instead, we were ready. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place as human forces systematically dismantled every major military installation of the species that had refused to stop their attacks on civilians. The message was becoming clear to everyone. Humanity had tried to solve these problems peacefully. They had given every opportunity for reason and diplomacy to prevail. They had warned repeatedly that continued aggression would have consequences. Now those consequences had arrived, delivered by a species that had been holding back their true capabilities, while desperately hoping they would never need to use them. The galaxy was learning what humans were like when they stopped being polite. Supreme Commander Velkash of the remaining Vorth forces thought he had found the perfect hiding place. The Nethys Nebula was a maze of gravitational anomalies and energy storms that made scanning impossible and navigation deadly for most species. Here, in a hidden base built inside a rogue planetoid, he planned to rebuild his scattered forces. He was wrong. Commander Liu Wei of the Human Deep Space Division studied the tactical display with professional interest. Her ship, the UES Persistence, hung motionless in space just outside the nebula, completely invisible to Vorth sensors. "Analysis complete, Commander," reported her science officer. "The nebula contains 17 Vorth vessels and one major installation. They're using the gravitational interference to mask their signatures." Commander Liu nodded. "And they think we can't track them because our technology works the same way theirs does. Should we call for reinforcements, ma'am?" "No need. Begin phase displacement." The Persistent shimmered and seemed to fade from normal space. To any observer, the ship had simply vanished. In reality, it had shifted into a parallel dimensional state that allowed it to exist between the normal universe and hyperspace. This was technology that no other species in the galaxy had even theorized was possible. Human science had discovered that space itself had layers, like a complex fabric that could be folded and moved through, in ways that made conventional physics irrelevant. The Vorth watched their sensors, helplessly as the human ship appeared to teleport through the nebula's most dangerous regions, ignoring gravitational fields that should have crushed any vessel into subatomic particles. "How are they moving through the storm barriers?" demanded Supreme Commander Velkash. "Those energy discharges would overload any known shield system." His science officer's voice shook with confusion. "Sir, they're not using shields. They're somehow existing in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. They're not really in our space when the energy hits them." Commander Liu's voice came through their communication system, calm and professional. "Supreme Commander Velkash, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Your forces are surrounded and have no possible escape routes." Velkash looked at his tactical display, which showed only empty space around his hidden base. "Surrounded? You have one ship. We have 17. Please look again." The Vorth sensors suddenly detected dozens of human ships materializing around them. Each vessel had been hidden in a different dimensional phase, invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. "Sir," whispered his tactical officer, "according to these readings, some of these ships have been here for weeks. They were waiting for us before we even arrived." Commander Liu's patient voice continued. "We've been tracking your retreat route for 6 days. We knew you would come here because this is where your contingency plans directed you to go. We've been monitoring your communications and supply movements since you fled the Kethmori system." Supreme Commander Velkash felt something he had never experienced before in 3 decades of military service. Absolute helplessness. "How could you know our contingency plans? They're classified at the highest levels. We've had copies of your strategic documents for 2 years. Your intelligence networks were compromised the day you started attacking human civilian targets. Across the galaxy, similar hunts were taking place. The hegemony leadership had fled to the void reaches, a region of space so empty and dark that most species avoided it entirely. They thought the absence of stars and planets would make them impossible to find. Captain Torres of the UES, Relentless, found them anyway. The hegemony had used their most advanced stealth technology to hide their command ship in the shadow of a dead star. Their crystalline vessels could alter their light reflection properties to become nearly invisible against the cosmic background. "Captain," Torres approached their position with what appeared to be casual indifference to their stealth capabilities. "Hegemony "Command Ship Infinite Glory," she broadcast. "This is Captain Maria Torres of Earth Defense. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." General Kivar, commanding from the hidden ship, was astounded that the humans had found them. "How did they locate us?" "We're using full stealth mode in the deepest void region of known space." His sensor operator's voice carried a note of awe. "Sir, they're not scanning for us. They're following our wake trail through subspace. They can track the distortions our passage created in space-time itself." It was true. Human sensors could detect the subtle warping of space that any ship created when it moved. Even ships using technology specifically designed to avoid leaving traces. The humans weren't just following where their enemies were going. They were tracking where they had been. "Impossible," General Kivar breathed. "The subspace wake fades within hours. We've been traveling for days." Captain Torres's voice carried a hint of amusement. "General, human sensors can track wake patterns up to 6 months old. We can follow your exact route from the moment you left hegemony space." The revelation was staggering. Humans could track any ship that had ever moved through space, following trails that other species didn't even know existed. But the hunt wasn't limited to conventional space. Some Vorth commanders had fled into hyperspace itself, using experimental technology to hide in the higher dimensions that most ships only passed through during faster-than-light travel. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Sato found them there too. Her ship, the UES Tracker, existed primarily in hyperspace, only occasionally dropping into normal space to resupply. The Vorth had thought they were safe in the swirling chaos of higher dimensions, where normal physics didn't apply and most technology simply failed to function. "Vorth vessels," she announced, her voice somehow carrying clearly through hyperspace static. "You are trespassing in protected dimensional space. Surrender now or face immediate destruction." The Vorth commander, Admiral Korthax, couldn't believe what he was hearing. "How are you even communicating with us? Our own systems barely work in hyperspace." Human technology was designed to operate in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Lieutenant Colonel Sato explained patiently. "We're not limited to three-dimensional space the way your species are." As if to prove her point, her ship performed maneuvers that violated every known law of physics, moving in directions that didn't exist in normal space while somehow remaining visible. To the Vorth sensors, the most desperate enemies tried, hiding in pocket dimensions artificially, created spaces that existed outside the normal universe. These had been considered the ultimate refuge, accessible only through complex technology that most species hadn't even discovered. Commander Jackson of the UES Seeker found them in the pocket dimensions too. "This is getting embarrassing," he commented to his crew as they approached another hidden Vorth base. "Do they really think we haven't mapped every pocket dimension in this region of space?" His navigation officer consulted her charts. "According to our surveys, we've cataloged 47 artificial pocket spaces within 100 light-years of here. All of them are monitored by automated sensor platforms." Commander Jackson activated the communication system. "Attention Vorth survivors in Pocket Dimension 7. This is your final warning. Surrender now or we will collapse your pocket space and drag you back into normal universe." The trapped Vorth forces couldn't understand how they had been found in a space that technically didn't exist. They had created their pocket dimension using technology that was supposed to be undetectable from outside. But humans had discovered something that no other species had realized. Pocket dimensions weren't really separate from normal space. They were connected by invisible threads of quantum entanglement that could be detected and followed by sufficiently advanced sensors. More terrifying still, humans could manipulate these connections to collapse pocket dimensions at will, forcing anyone hiding inside to return to normal space whether they wanted to or not. The hunt continued across the galaxy as human forces demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate everything other species understood about the universe. They could track ships through time, follow enemies across dimensional barriers, and find hidden bases in regions of space that supposedly didn't exist. Commander Liu reviewed the tactical reports with grim satisfaction. "Status on the search operations? 93% of fleeing enemy forces have been located and captured," her aide reported. "The remaining 7% are being tracked and will be apprehended within 72 hours. Any successful escapes?" "None, ma'am. Human tracking technology has proven effective against every concealment method the enemy has attempted." Commander Liu nodded. "What's the psychological impact?" "Significant, ma'am. Intercepted communications indicate that enemy forces no longer believe escape is possible. Many are surrendering without attempting to run. The hunt was almost over. The aliens were learning that running from humans was fundamentally different from evading other galactic powers. When humans decided to find someone, they would be found, no matter where they hid or what technology they used to conceal themselves. The galaxy's most advanced stealth technology, their most secret hiding places, their most sophisticated escape plans. None of it mattered when humans had decided that hiding time was over. The message was clear. When humanity stopped being polite, nowhere in the universe was safe for those who had chosen to be there 6 months after Ambassador Chen had delivered his final warning to the Galactic Council. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime looked very different. The curved seats that had once held proud representatives of ancient civilizations now hosted a much smaller, much quieter gathering. Many seats stood empty. The Vorth Empire, which had ruled dozens of star systems for over 1,000 years, no longer existed as a political entity. The hegemony, whose crystal ships had once been considered invincible, had been reduced to scattered civilian populations under human protection. Ambassador Chen walked slowly to the center of the hall, his footsteps echoing in the unusual silence. He looked older than before, bearing the weight of decisions that had reshaped the galaxy, but his eyes held a calm certainty that hadn't been there during the dark days of the crisis. The remaining representatives watched him with a mixture of fear, respect, and careful attention. They had learned that when humans spoke, it was wise to listen. "Honored representatives," Chen began, his voice carrying easily through the hushed hall. "6 months ago, I stood in this same place and warned you about the consequences of continued aggression against civilian populations. You chose not to listen." He gestured to the empty seats around the hall. The Vorth Empire chose to destroy a medical ship carrying supplies to refugee children. The hegemony chose to support attacks on defenseless colonies. They chose violence when peace was offered. The Zentari ambassador, one of the few who had survived the reshuffling of galactic power, leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador Chen, what is the current status of the former Vorth and hegemony populations?" Chen's expression softened slightly. "They are safe. Every civilian who had no choice in their leader's decisions has been relocated to protected worlds where they can rebuild their lives in peace. Children are being educated. Families are being reunited. No one is being punished for crimes they did not commit." General Kavar, the former hegemony commander, sat in the section reserved for prisoners of war who had been granted speaking privileges. His crystal form had dimmed with defeat, but his voice still carried clearly. "And what of those of us who did make those choices?" Chen looked directly at him. "You are alive, General. Your soldiers are alive. Your families are safe. You were shown more mercy than you showed to the civilians you targeted." The truth of this statement hung heavily in the air. Human forces had captured rather than killed their enemies whenever possible. Prison camps were clean, well supplied, and focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Many captured Vorth and hegemony military personnel were already being retrained for civilian occupations. However, Chen continued, "Your governments no longer exist. Your military forces have been permanently disbanded. Your war fleets have been dismantled. The galaxy will not risk another outbreak of the violence you brought to innocent worlds." Chancellor Velaner of the Zentari, speaking for many of the smaller governments, asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Ambassador, what does Earth intend for the future of galactic governance?" Chen smiled, and for the first time in months it was a genuine expression of warmth rather than diplomatic politeness. "Earth has no desire to rule the galaxy. We never wanted to be galactic police. We tried for years to encourage you to police yourselves." He activated a holographic display showing shipping routes throughout known space. Each route showed the distinctive signatures of human patrol ships. But since self-governance failed so completely, we have taken responsibility for ensuring that it never fails again. The display showed the scope of the new reality. Human ships patrolled every major trade route, monitored every system with a significant population, and maintained surveillance stations in every region where conflicts had previously occurred. "How many ships?" asked the Malhari representative, her tentacles coiling nervously around her speaking device. "Enough," Chen replied simply. "Every civilian transport in the galaxy now travels under human protection. Every refugee camp is guarded by human forces. Every attempt to rebuild aggressive military capabilities is detected and stopped before it can threaten innocent lives. The numbers, when they were eventually leaked, were staggering. Earth had deployed over 50,000 ships across the galaxy, more than all other spacefaring species combined had possessed before the war. The industrial capacity required to build and maintain such a fleet suggested a human civilization far larger and more advanced than anyone had imagined. General Harrison had been appointed as the first Director of Galactic Security, a position that hadn't existed before humans created it. His headquarters, built in the former Vorth capital system, coordinated protection efforts across thousands of worlds. The rules are simple, Chen explained to the assembled representatives. No military vessels larger than system defense craft. No weapons capable of orbital bombardment. No attacks on civilian targets under any circumstances. No wars of conquest. No slavery. No genocide. He paused, letting the weight of these pronouncements settle over the hall. These are not requests. These are not suggestions. These are the conditions under which the galaxy will now operate. The Karathi representative, whose government had remained neutral throughout the recent conflicts, raised a careful question. And if a government disagrees with these conditions? Chen's expression hardened. Then that government will discover what happens when humanity is forced to be impolite again. The threat was delivered quietly, almost conversationally, but no one in the hall doubted its sincerity. They had all seen what human forces could do when they stopped holding back. However, Chen continued, his tone becoming warmer again. We much prefer cooperation to conflict. Governments that focus on peaceful development, trade, and the welfare of their citizens will find Earth to be a helpful ally rather than a watchful guardian. This was proving to be true. Human technology was being shared freely with species that demonstrated peaceful intentions. Medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries were offered to any government that renounced aggressive expansion. Educational programs were helping former enemy populations transition to peaceful civilian life. The refugee crisis that had sparked the conflict was being systematically solved. Human industrial capacity was producing shelter, food, and medical supplies on a scale that dwarfed the efforts of all other species combined. Camps that had housed millions of displaced people for years were being transformed into permanent settlements, with full infrastructure and economic opportunities. Dr. Sarah Williams, who had died aboard the medical frigate that started humanity's military response, had become a symbol of the new galactic order. Memorial stations bearing her name were being constructed at major refugee sites, serving as both hospitals and schools. But the true measure of the new order wasn't in the military patrols or the monitoring stations. It was in the simple fact that for the first time in generations, civilian ships could travel anywhere in the galaxy without fear of attack. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to piracy were reopening under human protection. Scientific expeditions that had been impossible during the constant wars were now exploring regions of space that hadn't been visited in centuries. Cultural exchanges between species were flourishing as the threat of military conquest faded. The Vorth civilians, freed from the military culture that had dominated their society for so long, were discovering art, literature, and philosophy. Many were expressing amazement that they had lived their entire lives without realizing that alternatives to conquest existed. Hegemony crystal singers, whose beautiful harmonic abilities had been suppressed by their militaristic government, were now performing concerts that brought audiences from dozens of species to tears of joy. Ambassador Chen concluded his address to the council with words that would be remembered for generations. Earth warned the galaxy that we were holding back. We warned you that we preferred peace to war. We warned you that our patience had limits. He looked around the hall one final time, meeting the eyes of every representative present. You chose to test those limits. You chose to attack the innocent rather than listen to reason. You chose violence when peaceful solutions were offered. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. The galaxy is now a safer place because humanity stopped being polite. We take no joy in this fact, but we accept the responsibility it has given us. The children who would have died in your wars will now live to see adulthood. The refugees who would have suffered in camps will now have homes. The species who would have been conquered will now develop in peace. Chen gathered his papers and prepared to leave. Earth protects. Earth provides. Earth remembers. These are not just words. They are promises that we will keep for as long as the galaxy needs us to keep them. As he walked toward the exit, every representative in the hall stood in respectful silence. They had learned what it meant when humanity stopped holding back, and they had seen what happened when Earth was done being polite. The galaxy was a very different place now. It was also, for the first time in living memory, a truly peaceful one. The new galactic order had arrived, built not on conquest or intimidation, but on the simple principle that some species